Alright, welcome back, and for this video I'm going to be going over some basics things such as different types of ammo, different types of equipment, and your consumables on the side of your tank, being like repair kits and things like that. And in the next video I will go over crews and perk skills and all this stuff for your crew, and what you need to pick for certain tanks, or what is better for a different situation, and so on and so on. Now, these are all going to be things in your garage, which there is an event going on right now, so the garage looks different. But let's start with armor penetration from regular shells. I'm going to just go ahead and start with the Pershing, and of the standard AP rounds, which you're going to find on most everything except for artillery, which will mostly fire HE shells. It does tell you your standard penetration, your standard damage, and the RNG, or random numbers generator, is going to take into effect any number in between these for your penetration or your damage. And you just get lucky sometimes. Sometimes I'll penetrate somebody with more armor, sometimes it'll just ricochet off. You just get lucky sometimes. Now, something people don't understand is gold rounds, they do penetrate more. They are the exact same prone to bouncing off, so if you just have a terrible angle and you shouldn't be shooting that person in the first place, using a gold round isn't going to make you penetrate. Penetrating only for when you could penetrate if you had more penetration. It's kind of hard to explain. Just if they have more armor than you have capability to penetrate, that is when you would use a gold round. Now, gold rounds do not do extra damage unless they are special heat or special high explosive rounds such as HESH or some artillery tanks. And then high explosive rounds, which are not designed to penetrate, hence why they have such a low penetration, but a higher damage. These are good against tanks like the weak German tank destroyer line with the Waffenträgers and the RHMs and all of those things with the weak turrets and all that. They have really weak armor. You penetrate through that and it practically explodes inside the tank. That's why it does so much damage. Now, realistically, that would annihilate the tank, but because this is a game and it has hit points, it doesn't just blow up the tank in one shot, unless you hit the ammo rack, and then you get really lucky and you just take out one of those things and people get mad at you. One thing I do want to stress is that gold rounds are extremely expensive, whether you pay gold for them or you pay credits for them. A lot of people just waste their money on gold rounds, and I think it's kind of silly because if you have to fire nothing but gold rounds, you're probably not playing your tank the way you really should be playing it. I mean, I don't really fire gold rounds in the Pershing, hence why I don't carry very many. The only reason I carries any at all is maybe I'm the last person, and there's one other person, or there's two other people, and I know I can win the game, and then just use gold rounds to give me the edge to guarantee that I penetrate, instead of getting that RNG of a low penetration of 130 or 140. I can guarantee something of 200 millimeters or more of penetration. And I mean, it's different for every tank, whether you're doing artillery or you're doing some light tanks or something. You will see different types of, see, I have heat rounds and high explosive rounds for the artillery. And for artillery, I don't normally carry gold rounds because they do penetrate more, but they kind of tend to do less damage most of the time. So yeah, you might penetrate, but you're not looking to penetrate your enemy really anyways. You're just, because high explosive rounds just smash into the enemy. They don't really go through the armor. They kind of like flat-nosed, and they hit the tank and they explode on contact, and that's why they break modules so easily. But so small repair kit, small first aid kit, automatic, or just fire extinguishers. Everybody knows about these. But large repair kits, they do give like a 10% speed to repairing your module. So like if your track breaks, like I carry these on my tier 10. So even if my tier 10 gets hit by like an artillery shell, and I know that artillery has like a 20-second reload, instead of wasting $20,000 on a large repair kit to fix it, I'll just sit there and let them fix it, because my crew is pretty good with repair, because they're all at 100%, and I have the one guy on the repair, two guys on the repair skill, no, three. Look at that, 3 guys on the repair skill, so I can repair my tracks in maybe 8 or 9 seconds on a tier 10, which is really, really good. And then with this giving a 10% boost of fixing it faster, that does help a whole lot. Now, the large repair kit, it does help protect your crew from getting injured. That being said, they can still get injured, they can still die. It's not going to make them invincible, but it does help with giving them protection. I guess I don't really understand. Maybe they just wear bubble wrap or something like that, and maybe with the large repair kit, everything's wrapped in duct tape just to make it more powerful. Now, the fire extinguisher goes off automatically, hence why it's an automatic fire extinguisher. So you may only take one or two chunks of damage from the fire, being maybe 20 or 30 damage, and then it just goes off automatically. So you don't have to reach over and press 4, 5, or 6, or whatever you have set for your fire extinguisher to put out the fire. And even then, it doesn't go out instantly. It takes a second or two. So the automatic fire extinguisher, it is expensive, but it is a must-have, in my opinion, for tanks that you're going to do clan wars in, or just some of your higher tier tanks. Now, let's move over to equipment, and, well, this is everybody's favorite conversation because they are expensive. Look at that. Super heavy spall liner, 750,000 credits. But if there's artillery shooting at me, I have 50% protection to my crew and to my tank from ramming and artillery explosions by the tank, which does a whole lot. But I don't want to spend that kind of money on this, and I don't really have that much of an issue with artillery in this thing because usually they don't miss. So I'm not too worried about that. I actually carry a caliber rammer because that gives me a 10% faster reload speed. Ventilation because that gives all of your guys 5% more. You can see this modifier 5% due to equipment and consumables. That is the ventilation working, and so all of my guys are at 116%, except for the commander. He's at 105. And speaking of that, I almost forgot. There is chocolate for German tanks. You know, the French tanks have like tea and pudding. Or no, that's the British tanks that have tea and pudding. The French tanks have hard coffee. And the Japanese and the Chinese will have like combat rations or like rice cakes or something like that. And it makes all of your crew skill, these, it will go up by 10. So it'll have a modifier of 10. Just like the commander's bonus is 11 right here. 5 right here. So if you have ventilation and chocolate on your tank, it will be plus 15%, and my crew will be much higher up. And then also because the commander gets that plus 10%, he's going to make his commander's bonus on other people go up as well. So they may go up to 100 or 126, and then because the commander went up, about every 5% of the commander's actual skill gives 1% bonus to all of your crew members. So this guy will be at like 128% crew instead of just 126. So that does help a lot. And then you have the gasoline given 10% or 5% to traverse and engine traverse speed, turret traverse, and actual just speed overall of the tank. And it does actually in fact count for artillery because Wargaming considers with their game mechanics every single tank to have a turret. And because every single tank has a turret, if I were to put high octane gasoline on my M37, this gun would actually rotate to the left and to the right a lot faster than it would before, by 5 or 10% faster. And then also, the tank itself would rotate faster and move faster. So in higher tier artillery, such as like if you were playing, in my instance, like the Hummel or the GW Panther, if you were playing one of those, I actually recommend putting the gasoline on there because your whole tank moves faster, especially if you have a small window, like some of the higher tier German artilleries have, a small window. Then you want to be able to rotate to the other side of the map real quick if you need to help out your teammates. But let's get back to equipment. The toolbox, it's pretty basic, 25% gun laying drive. The circle that you look through when you're aiming at somebody, it goes smaller, 10% faster. So if you have like a 10-second aim-in speed, which is ridiculous, then it would aim in at 9 seconds instead. Or if you had a 5-second aim-in speed, it would aim in at about 4.2 seconds or something like that. It cuts it down. So it's good for heavy tanks, because I have one on my Lao, and I have one on my PZ-1C, which, yeah, you can call me a Seal Clover if you want. But I play it because the PZ-1C makes good credits. And I just had one of these laying around for my artillery, so I just went ahead and put it on here. And it's only 10 gold to take off, or you can just destroy it if you don't have any gold. So that's not a big deal, but the aiming speed for my Lao and the PZ-1C are already pretty decent, but because it's a heavy tank, its aiming speed is 2.9 seconds, which really isn't that bad for a tier 8 heavy. But with the gun laying drive, it aims in at about 2.4 seconds, so there is a considerable difference when I'm rotating and I stop and I look at somebody and I fire. I am much more accurate when I fire. My Pershing which is probably the most decked out with equipment, has the vertical stabilizer, which is usually only available on higher tier mediums and heavy tanks. And it's not really very descriptive when it says it gives 20% accuracy during turret movement and tank movement. What that means is that your shell's not going to be more accurate. You're not going to aim in your little circle faster. What it means is that when you turn your turret off to the side or you rotate your whole tank to the side, instead of your circle being like this big, it's going to start out being this big. It's going to come out 20% smaller. So you have the same aim-in speed over a shorter period of aiming in. It's hard to explain. Your circle starts out smaller than it would normally because of the vertical stabilizer. So this is good for shooting on the move, and I would recommend it for light tanks if you play a lot of light tanks, and I would recommend it on your higher tier heavy tank or medium and heavy tanks because you can fire on the move. So if you're rolling through your enemy, if you're trying to get beside them and shoot, you don't want to fire and hit them in the tracks. You want to fire and hit them in the actual part of their tank. So you could be aiming down your barrel and shooting, or you could just be hovering, or you could auto aim. But it's 20% smaller, so you will have better accuracy when you fire. Now the fuel tanks with the CO2, that does make your fuel tanks 50% stronger to being broken, which can set you on fire if they're broken. Coated optics, 10% view range up to 500, so you can't go past 500 view range. But if you have coated optics and the binoculars, which give you 25% view range when you're holding still, so after 3 seconds of holding still, if you have your binoculars on, your view range goes up 25%, because you would think your commander carries binoculars anyways, but it goes up 25%. But if you have coated optics and binoculars, they do not mix together. You don't get a 35% view range increase. You get 10% when you're moving at all times, and you get 25% when you're holding still. But when you're holding still, and if you have binoculars, this turns off. Your coated optics turn off, and your binoculars turn on. And when you're moving, the binoculars turn off, and the coated optics turn on. Even if you have both on the same tank, which I do sometimes, this is better for hard scouting. Like if you're driving around, you're going to get in somebody's face. Like an ELC, you would want that on your ELC, or you would want that on like an E25 or something like that. But then at the same time, you also want the binoculars on your E25. Now the wet ammo rack, 50% ammo rack. So like certain tanks, like American tanks, have a big problem with getting ammo racked because their turrets, they're not necessarily weak on the side, but the side of their turrets are usually rather large. Same thing with the British tanks, and so they are easy to ammo rack. So if you get ammo racked a lot, like RNG just does not like you, then you might want to consider getting a wet ammo rack, because it is a good investment, because they're not usually that expensive. Now the Camo Net gives a 25% bonus to holding still. After 3 seconds, you get 25% more camouflage. So if you're in like a really big tank, if I were to put this on the Lao, or if I were to go put this on my Jagdpanzer or the KV-1S, that'd be kind of silly because it really doesn't help that much because they're such large tanks. But it gives 25% bonus. So if you're using a small tank like an E25, a T1 Cunningham, the Stewart, or you're doing some passive scouting, then you do want to put on a camouflage net. And I do have the camouflage net on some of my tanks. Not sure which ones they are, but the camouflage net, 25% bonus to camouflage. That being said, click on exterior and you go to applying camouflage when they do 7, 30 days, or permanently, which costs gold. It puts on this camouflage on your tank. And this camouflage on your tank, yeah, it looks cool, but it also gives you 5% camouflage bonus. So if you put on this, and then you also have a camouflage net, for instance, let's say the E25, because I know that's painted because I have it permanent, then I would have plus 30% camouflage rating. And then because it's such a small silhouette tank already, if I were to put this behind a bush, if I don't fire, this thing is ridiculously well concealed. Now if I start firing, you do lose a whole bunch of camouflage rating. Like if you're moving, then your camouflage rating drops down to about 50% or 25% or something like that, unless you're in a scout tank. Scout tanks have 100% camouflage unless they're firing. If they're firing, their camo drops down. But the bigger your gun, the lower your camouflage drops when you fire. So tanks like the PZ-1C, it's a light tank. It has a 792 machine gun. if I start firing this, my camouflage rating really doesn't drop that much. Same thing with like the PZ4S or the E25, because their guns are 75 millimeters, they're kind of small. But a tank like this, where I have a 170 millimeter cannon, when I fire, my camouflage rating drops to literally almost zero, like maybe 2 or 4%. It is ridiculously low, and it's hard to hide this tank when you fire because your gun is so big. Same thing with like the Lao with its 105. When you fire, your camouflage drops depending on how big the caliber of your gun is. And if you're moving and you fire, then your camouflage is effectively zero. But your paint, if you have the paint, then does stay 5% higher than zero. So that does help a lot with that. So, that's the basics with that. I am going to go and create a video for these skills and perks on your crew members. I'm going to do that in the next video, probably in a couple minutes after I review this one. And I did recently just create a YouTube channel that I put all these on, so hit like, subscribe, leave comments, try and keep them friendly. Like if you have any rude comments or something like that, then email me. I mean, don't put them on YouTube, because I'm just going to have them removed or blocked or deleted or something like that. So, you know, try to keep it friendly. I am making this mostly for my clan, but it is open to the public. So if you want to look at it, or you get interested in the clan or something like that because you see me playing with some people, go ahead and visit the website. It's on my YouTube channel as well. But just I'm not making these videos because I'm not a pro at this game. I don't have the best stats in the world, but it's just, you know, I'm trying to help people out. So when I see those video comments on people who are like, "Oh, you're such a noob. Why are you doing this?" on people who give out really good, helpful tips on how to play World of Tanks, and then they get just utterly trash talked in the comments section, it's really kind of sad, because you don't have to say things like that. And secondly, that person spent a lot of time making these videos, because it's a lot harder than you think it is to make these videos and to post them on the internet and have people watch them and all that stuff. It's kind of awkward to know that somebody's watching you talk to a computer screen, especially for me, because I don't have a headset with a mic. I just have the microphone on my computer. So I mean, just don't be rude. I mean, but I'll see you in the next video.